All right, let's get into it. Absolute bombshell shaking the independent media world. DOJ bombshell alleges MAGA Media Group is backed by Russian money. There is a fantastic Twitter thread by Pekka Kalyanimi from Vatnik Soup and the Soup Central, who follows and is an expert on exactly these types of influence campaigns. So let me explain to you what's going on. And I'm not exaggerating when I say that this is shaking the independent media world. Russia has been funding a Tennessee-based media company called Tenet. Tenet Media is most known for promoting pro-Putin, anti-Ukraine, anti-democratic West narratives, and for supporting Donald Trump. Now, the money that's at play here, and I'm going to tell you who has been receiving the money. The money that's at play here originated with Russian state TV channel RT. It was funneled through various shell companies in countries like Turkey and the United Arab Emirates and others, in some cases masked as payments for electronics. And two individuals involved from RT, Konstantin Kalashnikov and Elena Afanasieva, have been charged. There's an indictment with conspiracy to commit money laundering and conspiracy to violate the Foreign Agents Registration Act. These two also instructed the content creators that were being funded by this entire project. Now, the reason we're learning about all of this is because of the indictment. The details in the indictment are stunning, and I encourage you to look at it. Now, interestingly, Tenet was founded in 2022 by Lauren Chen and Liam Donovan. Now, you might remember the name Lauren Chen. I've met Lauren Chen. I was on a panel with her at Politicon years ago. And there is something in particular about Lauren Chen's content relative to her name recognition that is a common thread with a lot of these sort of astroturfed content creators, which I will get to in a moment. So then we have the list of media people that are involved with Tenet Media. And the list includes Tim Pool, who's been a guest on this program, Benny Johnson, with whom I appeared on the Piers Morgan program recently, Dave Rubin, who he has been on this show before, and I've been on his show a decade ago before he had this very strange political awakening where he changed all his political views, and Lauren Southern. So Tim Pool, Benny Johnson, Dave Rubin, Lauren Southern, probably the biggest names that are involved here. Now, it's really interesting to go back and reconsider some of the content that these creators have been putting out in light of these revelations about the funding. Tim Pool, for example, went all in his videos with claims like Ukraine is the enemy of this country and suggesting we should apologize to Russia.
They know it. But I don't know that it matters anymore. This is psychotic. Ukraine is the enemy of this country. Ukraine is our enemy, being funded by the Democrats. I will stress this again. One of the greatest enemies of our nation right now is Ukraine. They are expanding this war. Now, don't get me wrong. I know you've got criminal elements of the U.S. government pushing them and guiding them and telling them what to do. Ukraine is now accused, a German warrant issued for blowing up the Nord Stream pipeline, triggering this conflict. Ukraine is the greatest threat to this nation and to the world. We should rescind all funding and financing, pull out all military support, and we should apologize to Russia.
Now, he seems to be reading something in this video. If he's reading a script and who wrote the script, I mean, we just don't know. But obviously, everything is suspect now, given these revelations. Also, on Twitter, or X as it's now called, Tim has been very vocal about this issue, tweeting at one point, "I now hate and despise Ukraine." Tweeting at another point, "Trump got impeached for freezing military aid to Ukraine. Biden faces no consequences for freezing military aid to Israel. This proves the Ukrainians run the U.S. Now when someone asks, who is they, though, you respond, the Ukrainians." Tim Pool posting, "The people screaming about Trump working for Russia are the same people demanding social media censor misinformation. Stop listening to these people." So a lot of stuff here that now is very suspect involving Tim Pool. Then we go to Benny Johnson. Benny Johnson's main talking points have often focused around he just doesn't want aid going to Ukraine And Democrats are causing so many problems domestically. Why would we send any money to Ukraine? You then have Lauren Southern, and the Russian connection there is much more plain to see. She's actually visited Moscow, and she met with Alexander Dugin, who's this guy who provided the blueprint for Russian expansion and imperialism in his 1997 book, Foundation of Geopolitics. We've talked about that. And then, of course, you also have Dave Rubin. Dave Rubin, who has increasingly pushed this pro-Trump, sort of skeptical of the West kind of narrative. Now, a lot of these guys, people, are kind of panicking. And so they've put out statements that are all very similar in structure. Dave Rubin is essentially claiming he's just a victim here. He put out a statement where he says, statement on the DOJ indictment. These allegations clearly show that I and other commentators were the victims of this scheme. I knew absolutely nothing about any of this fraudulent activity, period. People of the Internet was a silly show covering viral videos, which ended 4 months ago. The DOJ has never contacted me regarding this matter. I have no intention to comment further. The screenshot from the indictment speaks for itself. So he's basically saying, I was a victim here. I was victimized. Benny Johnson also referred to himself as a victim, saying, quote, a year ago, a media startup pitched my company to provide content as an independent contractor. Our lawyers negotiated a standard arm's length deal, which was later terminated. We are disturbed by the allegations in today's indictment, which make clear that myself and other influencers were victims in this alleged scheme. My lawyers will handle anyone who states or suggests otherwise, I guess threatening lawsuits. So let's talk a little bit about this. To be perfectly clear, I believe completely that no one was telling these individuals necessarily what they have to say, but it's sort of like the RT thing. I don't know if you guys remember when RT was on the air, and we would often hear from RT hosts and whatnot, and they would say, I have total freedom to say whatever I want. RT never comes in and says, here's what you have to say about Putin or anything else. What's really critical to understand is that Russian intelligence prefers if you don't know that you're doing their bidding. What they want to do is amplify voices that are already predisposed to say what's useful to them. And so when it came to the on-air talent at RT, for example, they don't need to hire people and then go, listen, here's how you have to cover stories. They would say, hey, here's someone whose skepticism of American institutions is really useful to our goal of destabilizing American democracy. Let's hire them. Let's give them a bunch of money. We don't have to tell them what to say. So the strategy here is you amplify voices that are predisposed to say what you want, and then you give them the money to do as much as possible with a larger reach. The report is that as far as Benny Johnson goes, it was a deal for $400,000 a month plus some kind of six-figure signing bonus. These are early reports. It was very obvious in some of these cases, that the storylines just didn't really seem to match the natural development of one's kind of political views. And I want to be careful about what I say so that I don't, necessarily anger any particular person. But when you look at the trajectories of some of these individuals and you see the rapid, in some cases, subscriber growth that took place without necessarily a lot of views, sort of a disproportionate amount of public notoriety that didn't seem matched by the actual interest in the content, because a lot of people aren't necessarily interested in what these individuals are saying, you start to wonder, is there some artificial mechanism that is signal boosting the content? I think that's where we leave it for now. What I can tell you is that we don't get any money from anybody like this. We're on YouTube and we make money from the YouTube ad program. We have no contact with any of the advertisers. Individual people pay $2, $3, $4, $5 a month or $60, $70 for the year. Any one of them can cancel at any time. None of them direct content on the program. I mean, the point I'm trying to make here is not all independent media is created equal. And sometimes apparently independent media can actually be wrapped up with some pretty ugly stuff. Let's leave it there. Are you aware that there are hundreds of commercial databases and people search sites holding your personal information? And the number just keeps growing. Anyone, your boss, your ex, can use these sites to look at your online activity, home addresses, phone numbers, emails, license plate, family members, financial details, even political beliefs. In Europe, they have laws protecting against this, but it's still a free-for-all in the United States. Even the FBI will sometimes purchase data from companies like these to obtain private information about Americans without even getting a search warrant. Now, our sponsor, Incogni, offers a solution. Signing up takes just seconds. Incogni sends takedown notices to major data brokers, compelling them to remove your information as they are legally required to do. Incogni keeps you updated every step of the way with live information about which companies have complied, which are in progress. Incogni even will follow up and appeal on your behalf, saving you hundreds of hours of work. Very much worth it. This can also cut down on how many spam phone calls and emails you get, since scammers and solicitors are getting your info from the very same lists. Go to incogni.com/Pakman and you'll get 60% off with code Pakman. The link is down below.